were talking about data input methods, and we will continue from there. The last point I was trying to make was that if there are forms in which data is filled up, that has to be manually entered by an operator, and manual errors are common, and of course one has to take abundant caution to plan the input form in such a way that the probability of error is reduced. But it will be ideal if you can have a machine which can automatically read the form, interpret whatever is in the form, and then convert it into a computer readable file. Unfortunately, that technology is not yet there. In other words, the technology to be able to read handwriting and interpret it absolutely correctly without any errors, which is essential when you input particularly forms with critical information, is not mature at this time. Hopefully in a few years time it will mature, but at this time it has not matured, with the result that one has no alternative but to enter that manually, except in certain cases where you are asked to darken certain boxes, like in multiple choice questions in an examination where large number of candidates take part. There automatic computer readability is possible because there is no real handwriting recognition involved. It is only a mark sensing which is needed. Mark sensing is quite mature, and automatic grading of papers which are really blackened, some boxes are blackened by the candidate, is now commonly used in many organizations. So, now we will move on to the another method of inputting data called interactive data input. Interactive data input has become currently very popular with the advent of PCs and also the so called client server mode of computing. In other words, there is a large computer in the background which is called a server, which has got a huge database, methods of archiving data and so on, and it is connected through a local area network to a number of PCs. The PCs are rudimentary PCs. In other words, they are inexpensive PCs without too much of memory and does not need a lot of disk and so on. So, these are used for data input, low cost PCs you might say, and so in that the input is interactive. In other words, the instead of the form being filled up, there are a number of methods of interactive data inputs, and I will discuss them, where the operator inputs the data online, that is the PC connected to the server, and while it is being connected to the server, if there is any error in the data input, instantaneously a program inside that PC will detect such an error. If it is an obvious error, like entering a numeric in an alphabetic field or vice versa, instead of an alphabetic field putting a number, and in a currency field instead of entering dollar or rupees or euro, if he enters some other like he enters something like percentage and so on, then it will automatically point out the error, and before any damage is done he has to correct it right away. So, the amount of time required to later on check them out is reduced. So, interactive data input has the advantage of instant response if an error is made, and you can design the screen in a flexible manner. In other words, you did not have to cramp the entire form into one screen. The screens can be a number of screens one after the other, and the forms can be very well laid out, and one can enter the forms in a much easier fashion than in by inputting manually from a form onto that. Okay. So, but of course, this is not always true in every case, but there are many situations where this is possible. Use of icons and mouse simplifies the predetermined choice of data. In other words, the clicking of a mouse and moving an arrow and so on is so simple that it is very convenient to input the data. And interactive data input has gained in importance, particularly because a lot of input is now entered by users. Like if you have an e-commerce site, like if you want to book your ticket by train in the on the computer, then you have to, as a user, you got to enter all the data which has to be taken by the reservation program. So, the data entry particularly by user has to be checked while it is being entered to throw out incorrect data. Otherwise, there will be a problem downstream. So, in other words, when it goes to reservation program, the reservation program will not know what to do. So, you have to be able to correct or any errors which the user makes in data entry, because after all, users are not expert typists, they are novice typists. They use a single finger to input data, and the probability of them making error is quite large. So, you should really be able to make sure that particularly for users, the forms which are designed for interactive data input are foolproof. In other words, it is it can be done by any non-expert who does not have to know much about the computer except that the keyboard is there and he has to enter something on the keyboard. And that is the reason why again interactive data input has gained in importance. There are two situations. One is a user enters data by himself, and the other is the operator also may be entering data, but in interactive fashion in the machine. There are many methods of interactive data input. There are three principal methods which I will talk about. One is called menu driven, and the other is called template driven, and third is called command driven. Menu driven, as the name implies, is that there are certain number of choices given to the user, and based on the choice there is a kind of, you might say, a tree which is there. Depending on one choice, it will go to one branch along the tree and provide more choices which are relevant for that tree. And that way the interactive data input is effectively adaptive type of data input by the user. Depending upon the input of particular data, it goes to one of a number of different alternative paths along a tree. Okay. Templates are essentially equivalent to forms, but the forms are in the on the screen, and you enter on the form in the screen. And the advantage of template is that again is very clearly demarcates what is to be entered, where it is to be entered, and so on. And while entering, there will be a background program which will check the data entry and right away throw out data which is incorrect. And a third one is command based, where the computer asks you certain questions, and based on those questions you give answers to those questions. So, I will illustrate all these three methods of entering data by some examples, some simple examples. Here, for instance, you want to enter a new student record. Do you want to enter a new student record? There is, in other words, a database application. There is a database of students, and when database is updated by the administrator or by an operator who was told to update it, one has to kind of ask the update program will ask whether you want to enter a new data record for a student, or it is for deleting an existing student record or changing what is existing as a student record. So, you type 1, 2 or 3. So, it is an interactive. So, if you type 1 for instance, enter a new student record, then it will go to a branch where it will say give the name of the student and give the roll number. In fact, it will start with asking the roll number because roll number is a key. So, enter the roll number of the student, enter the name of the student, enter the year he is in, enter the department he is joining, and so on. It may be a lot of information, including things like date of birth, permanent address, hostel address, and so on. So, it will go along that direction when a new student record is to be entered. If it is deleting a student record, that in fact that will really ask do you really want to delete, because if suppose by mistake you type 2 and if you delete it once and for all, it is gone. So, normally a program when you type 2 as your choice, it will ask a question, do you really want to delete, and then you have to say yes. If you say yes, then it will say give the roll number of the student, and you enter the roll number, and it will bring back the student's name and roll number, and again ask you, is this the right name of the student, because you may have entered the roll number incorrectly. So, then you have to again say yes, then only it will go ahead and start the delete operations. And for changing student record, similarly, do you want to change the student record? Once you put 3, it will again ask, do you want to change the student record? If you say yes, it will say give the roll number, and if you give the roll number, then it will bring out the student record and display it in front of you, and it will ask you which field do you want to change. Then you give the say you want to change the address field, and so it will then put the old address is so and so, then you say type new address, it will say, and you type the new address. Okay. And as soon as you type the new address, you say enter, and it will overwrite. The old address will be gone and new address will be put into that place. So, in other words, in the menu driven thing, whenever an alternative is picked, there is a progressive conversation which goes on, and the conversation is designed in such a way that is appropriate for any of the given or initial choices. So, the root, you might say, root of the tree is the first choice, and then the branches go along depending upon what you chose for the root. And so, the design of a menu driven thing, menu driven data input is very effective, because it's kind of foolproof. It gives a reasonable amount of control for the administrator to design the menu, and kind of guides the user, or in fact this case operator, through all the steps, because it does not assume, it also assumes more or less, you might say, that the any novice or a new person who enters is still he will not make mistakes, and that an incorrect entry in a database can be really fatal. So, that the menu based system is very useful, particularly because there is a turnover of people in any organization, and you do not have to go through any large training, because almost common sense, you have to follow a certain path which is predetermined for you. Okay. Now, the other, as I said, the second method is template. Template is analogous to a form, has features to reject incorrect data input with a built-in program while you are entering. Okay. And it is a user-friendly visual presentation. In fact, example, for instance, entering a student name In the previous case, for instance, we are saying enter new student. That is in the menu, the alternative you picked was enter a new student. Then if type 1, it may go to a form. So the point I am trying to make is that the three are not exclusive. They can be combined as appropriate. So if the operator or the user enters choice 1, then it will go this, ask for the student roll number and ask you to give the name. And while entering name, it also has to tell you what do you have to enter first, what do you have to enter last. And first name or initials, as many people, particularly in South India, do not really, as I pointed out, have the first name last name concept. So you can assume that you have an initial, like my name is V is my initial, my name is Rajaraman. So I effectively put V as the first initial and enter RAJ, RAMN as the last name. So this may, or if it is a first name last name business, then you can put a first name. Some people have first name, initial, last name, and there are some people who have multiple initials like VKRV Rao, okay, and you put all those initials and then put the last name, okay. And of course, in the case of a surname like Rao, the initials become very important, because there are, even if you take the institute, there are in our institute maybe about at least 30 or 40 different Raos, and the only way you distinguish between them is by looking at the initials, okay. And so the initials may be more than one initial, that is why it says first name or initials. Then you put a department code. There is, you have given the choice CE, CS, ME, EE, IT, whatever, okay. It may be a 2-letter code or it could be a 3-letter code. Normally you use a code which is somewhat meaningful, like CS would normally mean computer science, CE would normally mean civil engineering, and ME is mechanical, E is electrical, and so on. So you normally try to put a meaningful name, meaningful abbreviation, you might say, or code. And if suppose large number of departments which are similar, like civil engineering and chemical engineering, both could be CE. So you try to put one more letter like CHE for chemical engineering, and CVE or just CE for civil engineering. So that depends upon the situation. See, so normally 2 or 3 letters would suffice. Mostly 3 letters will be more than sufficient for representing a huge number of different disciplines. Okay, by and large, people are satisfied with three letters, because the point, of course, it's the machine is going to process, but the putting more letters is again is going to lead to error possibility. The lesser the number of letters, the better off you are. The lesser the data entry, the better off you are. So the principal point in data entry is minimize the number of keystrokes. So one would like to minimize as far as possible. And then the year. Now again, in this case, the year, we just put one box. Suppose a person enters 06, it might not accept it, saying that it will say enter the full year 2006. So you are asked to enter all 4 digits. Or if you want to be lot more careful, on the right hand side you might say enter all 4 digits of the year. Or in the year box itself, you might put 4 boxes and say enter all boxes. Okay, and similarly enter hostel code and so on. So the point really is it will guide you through, the template will guide you through each of them, and as you enter, if there is an error made or if there is a misunderstanding, at that time itself the machine is going to point it out. Interactive command based menu. An example is again the menu somewhat like the menu thing. Did you the commands is there in the menu thing, it gives you a choice of 1 of 3 and so on, whereas in this case the machine will ask you a question. Did you request deletion of the record? That the user says yes, computer give student roll number. In fact, if you want to be abundantly cautious, you can even ask, the computer can really ask, do you really want to delete the record? Type yes or no, and you would again type yes or no, and it will go ahead with computer give student roll number, and you give the roll number, and the roll number is a key field. If the error is made in the entry of the roll number, then there could be a later on difficulty which will arise while processing. In fact, one of the most common errors which is made in data entry is called what is called transcription error. Instead of putting 56743, one might the roll number may be written by hand, and 7 may look like a 1, and so he may enter 56143, and 56143 may be a legal roll number. It may belong to some other student's name. So to avoid that, you normally would like to have some automatic error detection in key data fields, and I will, in fact, later in this lecture I am going to talk about methods of automatic detection of errors, particularly in key data fields like roll number, account number, pin code and stuff like that. There is any identification number or identification which a person may have. So that we will talk about later on. But I am assuming at this time that there is this any error is made, the machine is going to point out there is not a legal roll number. Okay, and then it will go and retrieve the file and ask the question, is the name of the student A.K. Jain? Type yes or no, and you, because you wanted to delete, you would have the entire data about that student, and if this is a first year student, yes or no, you, and shall I delete name again, it asks, and you say yes. Then because after the name is given and after the year is given, maybe you made a mistake in terms of the original roll number, and say, as I said, if you entered 56143 instead of the 56743, 143 may belong to some other student. So it will ask us question, is the name of the student A.K. Jain, and what you would have is A.K. Rao. Then you say male, you wake up and say it is not really A.K. Rao, so you put a no, then it will say retype the roll number, and that is the way it will go in terms of the command. Okay, so the advantage is that any entry in error which is made is automatically detected while entry is being made. Okay, that is the greatest advantage of interactive data input. As I said, all three models will occur together, they are not exclusive. Menu, forms and commands are not exclusive, mutually exclusive. Graphical user interface design is nowadays very simplified. Languages like Visual Basic and others allow you to work on the screen very effectively, and so with the screen you can do the work, and so screen based systems are easy to design, and of course this particular examples given only a flavor of the subject. One has to actually sit down and do a lot of his or her own design for interactive conversations, as well as templates and menus and so on, and then you will learn. Particularly if you are given a project, which is normally the case in all undergraduate courses, in the project, if you are doing something like a hostel management system or hotel management system or reservation system or what have you, you will be required to design all the necessary input forms, and so you go back and kind of use these ideas as applicable for that particular project and exercise, and that way you will learn more. Now The next topic in data input is coding of data. What is coding? Coding is to give unique identifier instead of something which is a non-unique. Like for instance, why do we use roll number instead of a name? The reason why you use roll number instead of a name is because the name is not a unique identifier. In fact, if I take the Bangalore telephone directory and look at say R Rajanna or something like that, there are 5 pages of R Rajannas. Okay, such a common name in Karnataka that R Rajanna is so common, and so R Rajanna cannot be a unique identifier. So if you want to kind of give different unique identifiers, you really have to have some method of coding that name into a number. Okay, and because you have to distinguish between really different Rajannas. In the case of course telephone directory, telephone numbers are different, and the addresses, of course the addresses are normally different, and the addresses will effectively allow you to kind of track down a particular R Rajanna you require. But the point I want to make is that names are not unique, whereas some codification is unique. So you need a unique identifier. And cross-referencing between applications. What I mean by that is that in a student roll number, for instance, is a very important kind of a data about a student, because the roll number is used in the examinations, it is used in your result card. If it is a residential campus, it is also used in the for hostel accommodation, and it is used in many situations. In residential campuses, the roll number is also used for if you want to use the medical facilities and so on. Okay, so it is a key identifier. So the key identifier is something which is important, and it will be used in accounts department for your fees and so on. So you need a number, key number, one number, one unique number to cross reference between different applications. But in accounting applications like fee collection and examination results application and so on. And third important reason why we code is that storage and retrieval is efficient, because the length of a code is much shorter than say a length of a name. Okay, if a name, if a particular person's name is a long name, okay, and then the as I said, apart from the fact that it is not unique, it also becomes a lot of data entry. Okay, whereas this is a lot more concise in terms of the amount of storage it requires, and also retrieval based on a key is much faster, because it has to only go and search in a given subset of maybe numbers, but it's a roll number. What are the requirements of a good code? Because there are many coding methods. We look at various coding methods. Of course, we said the need we know now. Okay, unique identification, cross referencing, and efficient storage. Why and how do we do it, and what are the requirements of a good code, and then how do we do it? That's the way we go. Why, what, and how. Okay, and what are the requirements of a good coding scheme? Should be concise. The smaller the length, the smaller is the amount of storage required, and less is the data input effort. And as I said, the more the data input, the more is the error probability. So it should be expandable. In other words, when no system is static. When new student joins in a college, you have to assign a new roll number for that person, and so the code should be such that when somebody new joins, it should be expandable easily. You can add that roll number without any great difficulty. Like in a bank, savings accounts, current accounts, many accounts are there, and every day somebody starts a new account, and somebody starts a new account, you have to give a unique identification number for their account to be able to retrieve and so on. So it should be expandable. Any system, unless there is a capability of expanding it, it is useless. Okay. If it is meaningful, it is very nice. What I mean by meaningful is that by just looking at the code, you must have some idea about what that code represents. So, meaningfulness, like if you have a roll number which is just a string of digits, it is not meaningful. Similarly, if you have a string of digits for an account number in a bank, it is not meaningful. Whereas, if you say SA for savings, CU for current, and then SA and then give some number, then at least you know it is a savings account, and if it is CU, you know it is current account. So, it is a bit more meaningful than just a number. Okay. So, meaningfulness, I will explain how you can make meaningful codes. To some extent, if I want to make code a little bit meaningful, it becomes less concise. In other words, the point is that the requirements are not what I would say non-conflicting. If you want to meet one requirement, you may have to kind of let go or kind of loosen some other requirement. But we will ultimately see what is the best coding method. It must be comprehensive. All relevant characteristics of the item should be included, see. And again, if you want to make it comprehensive and meaningful, it may not be concise and precise, unique, unambiguous. The conciseness and preciseness are different. Conciseness is smallest length. Preciseness, for instance, an meaningful code would be precise because it is unique and unambiguous. In fact, precision is a necessary requirement for all codes. See, if a code is not precise, it is not really a code, because a code is a unique identifier. Okay. So, precision is an essential or necessary condition for a code. Okay. And conciseness is not a necessary condition for a code. It's a desirable condition for a code. So, you might say that there are certain things which are essential and there are certain things which are desirable. Preciseness is essential, whereas the others are desirable. So, depending upon whatever code you pick, the essential qualification must be fulfilled, and then you look at the desirable qualifications. Now, let us look at methods of coding. Okay, so serial number code is the simplest. What I mean by serial number code is, as and when a student joins, I give next serial number to that student. If I got 358 as the last serial number, last roll number, when a new student joins, I put 359. Similarly, in a bank, when a new account number, the bank subscriber joins, wants to become an account holder, you look at the last account number which is assigned, and you just add 1 and give the next account number to that person. Okay, and that is the serial numbering. Serial numbering is by nature not meaningful, because it is just a number. As you proceed, you are just giving serially one after the other. So, it is not meaningful. Block codes are where you give blocks of numbers. Within the block you give serial number. Like for instance, a bank may decide that any number between 1 and 1000 is the current account number, anything which is between 2000 and 10,000 is a savings account number. So, these are two different blocks, and by looking at whether it is between 1000 and 2000, for between say of course 0 you will not normally assign, maybe some 1 to 1000 whatever, 1 to 1000, or is it between 2000 or higher, you know whether it is a current account or savings account. So, block codes are expandable. Of course, also in some, it is a little bit more meaningful than serial number, because from the blocks you can know which particular account type it is. Similarly, roll number also you may give blocks, like you may give the first block of 100 numbers to the civil engineering department, next 100 numbers to mechanical engineering, and so on. So you may give such blocks, and it's called a block code. And group classification code is a little bit more meaningful, where groups are give the characteristics of the item which is being coded. Okay. Now, in this case, if a roll number is being coded, the roll number, to make it more meaningful, you might assign a roll number which is not just a serial number, but it might say the year admitted. First 2 digits may be the year admitted. Okay. The term admitted, was he admitted in the first term or second term, and department code may be there. 05 may be computer science. In fact, if you want to make it a little bit more meaningful, instead of putting 05, you have put CS, because character codes are a little bit more meaningful than numeric code. Status UG or PG, you can either put 1 or 2, or you put UG or PG. And serial number in the department. So, if he is in that department, he is a UG student, you may give a certain serial number, which is so this entire 2, 1, 3, 5, 6, 9 digit code, 9 character code you might say, now becomes roll number, but it is a lot more meaningful. As soon as you look at the roll number, you know which year the student joined, which term he joined, which department he is in, and whether he is a UG or a PG, and so on. And this will be useful in certain other situations, like fee calculation, or any scholarships to be given, because PGs may be given scholarships and UGs may not be given scholarships. So that kind of a thing, it can be used later on in certain programs, this fact. Okay. So it is called it's more meaningful. Meaningful characters can be used, or numbers can be used with certain ideas. In other words, these are called group classification codes. There is something called a significant code, where the code itself has some parts which represent the value of the code. Like for instance, a hosiery manufacturer may code the actual vests or bunions they make as they may be making bunions, they may be making underwear, they may be making socks, and so on. So depending upon what the item is, he may give a BA for bunion, and it's meant for ladies or male or female, you put a 1 or 2 depending on that. So look at that chest size. See, that is now a quantitative description of that item, because this is actually a number which represents some value corresponding to that bunion, which is namely chest size. 35 is chest, 95 is a centimeter is the chest size. So that number is given, and cotton, C is for cotton, and color, blue color or red color or whatever, and style, whether it is round neck or wheel neck, sleeveless, whatever. Okay, and so depending upon they may use different codes. So this is called significant code. Significant code is somewhat meaningful. It also incorporates some values which are of importance in the item. So if we compare serial number code, block code, group classification and code and significant code, there are number of qualities which I talked about, namely concise, expandable, meaningful, comprehensive, and precise. You see the last column, all of them are precise, because I said the precision is an essential qualification. So all of them fulfill the essential qualification. Serial number is not concise, it is expandable, and it is not meaningful, it is not comprehensive. What we mean by comprehensive is, does it really kind of cover all characteristics of a code? In other words, you might look at to some extent the roll number is somewhat comprehensive, because it gives a lot of information about that. Similarly, significant code is also somewhat comprehensive. So block codes are moderately concise because there are blanks in between blocks. It is expandable, it is not meaningful, it is not comprehensive, of course it has got to be precise. Group classification code, it is not concise because I added more digits than necessary. It is expandable, it is meaningful, and it is comprehensive. Expandable is very simple because I have a serial number at the end, and if a new student joins in computer science department, I give the next serial number to that person. And significant codes are also not concise, they are expandable, they are meaningful, they are comprehensive, and they are precise. Okay. So if you really want to have a reasonably expandable, meaningful, comprehensive code, it is better to pick either group classification codes or significant codes and not serial number or block. So even though they are not concise. As I pointed out, incorrect data entry can lead to chaos. Mistakes occur as volume of data process is large. In other words, the major difference between the kind of toy problems you do in projects in the college and a real field situation is that in the real situation the number of data items might run into lakhs, like the CET number of students appearing in CET will be a very large number. So the volume is very large. So when the volume becomes large, there is definitely a need to detect and correct errors at data entry stage itself, otherwise get into problem later on. Actually, error is detected by introducing controlled redundancy in codes. In other words, detection of errors always requires some extra digits to be put into the code which help you to detect the error. Like all of you in a digital computer design course or logic course would have talked about the parity bit. The parity bit is to a certain number of bits of data bits, you add a parity bit, and the total together, if the parity fails, then you say there is a single error in one of the bits, and so it is an error detecting code. Okay. Similarly, if you use a code like a decimal number, then instead of parity bit, I must have a extra digital number, extra digit, which is an error detecting digit. It is also possible to have an error correction also, but as error correction is as I said, redundancy becomes too much, and so normally people are satisfied with error detection. So you have a controlled redundancy, that is one extra digit. See, if you got a 8-digit number, you add one extra digit. It does not necessarily mean that these kind of error detection can be done only in numeric codes. It can be done in any kind of code, numeric as well as alphanumeric. But I will restrict myself in my discussion to numeric codes to illustrate the point. And it can be expanded to alphanumeric. I will tell you how to do that. And error control digit is added to the given code to actually detect the error. Now, before detecting any error, in order to kind of detect any error, first of all you got to find out what type of errors do people normally make in data entry. See, in the case of parity bit, it is assumed that the error occurs in transmission, and so it is a random error. Any one of the bits can go wrong, and people assume that only single bit can go wrong. So, a single bit parity detection is what is done with odd parity or even parity. So, in this case it need not be a random kind of a thing, but because human beings are entering the data. So, the human beings have a certain tendency to make certain types of errors. They are biased to certain errors. So, you must have some data about the type of mistakes which people make. So, people have actually done this statistical study, and they found out that the kind of errors they make are of two types. One is called a signal transcription error. Like for instance, if you look at the number 49687, if a person enters 48687, then it is called a single transcription error. Single digit has been changed from 9 to 8. Okay, so it is called a transcription error, and that is very common. One digit, because it can, instead of 1 putting a 7, or instead of a 4 putting a sometimes 7 and things like that. So it is kind of careless mistake, you might say. And the other is a transposition error, because you type fast, you transpose digits. So 44687 becomes 48657. So this is called a transposition error. There is 2 digits are transposed. So 95% of all errors are either transposition errors or transcription errors. So if you can come up with a code which will detect 95% of the errors, then you are reasonably all right. And in fact, the method I am going to talk about is guaranteed to detect all transcription errors, single transcription errors, and all single transposition errors. It is not guaranteed to detect multiple transposition errors or multiple transcription errors, but there is a certain probability that they also will be found out. The probability with which they can be found out is reasonably large, and people have found that over something like 10,000 data items, if you use an error detecting digit, at least 9,000 out of 10,000 items, 9,998 will be detected, only 2 will be left undetected. So the single error detection code is a very useful code. And a common method of coding is, suppose you are given a code say 78694. 78694 is a code. Okay. In fact, I have taken the same thing. So I put the least significant digit here, 7, 8, 6, 9 and 4. Okay. So I start with the least significant digit, multiply by 2, next digit multiply by 3, next by 4, next by 5, next by 6, add all of this, and if I get 131. Divide 131 by 11, I get a remainder of 10. So that is another 131 mod 11 is 10. So append 11 minus 10, 1, that is whatever is the remainder. So 11 is the number I picked. Why did I pick 11? There is not a magic number. I will explain why 11 is picked. 11 minus 1 is 10, I append 1. So a new code becomes 49687 with an added error detecting digit of 1. Suppose in this particular division the remainder becomes 10, I got only one digit to represent one place. So I use x. If it is remainder is 10, I use the x in the last digit place. So this is the way the code is formed. Now how do I detect the error? So this is the correct code, 496871. Somebody entered 486871. Instead of 9, he put an 8. Then error detection is, again you take this code, 1 into 1, 7 into 2, 8 into 3, 6 into 4, 8 into 5 plus 4 into 6 becomes 127 by 11. Remainder is not equal to 0. The remainder, because the way in which this is designed is that the sum of all this, weighted sum, is divisible by 11. That is how I made that, that is why I used 11 minus 1, the remainder, as the appended number. Okay. So that is by design. So if it is not 0, that means it is an error. So immediately I know there is an error. So if I 496871, I am just now doing a transposition error. Like in fact the extra digit I added can also be erroneous. In other words, somebody can make an error by entering this in place of 9 and 9 in the last place. So now this becomes single transposition error. In this case also error detection is there because of the fact that as I said, any single transposition error or any single transcription error can be detected by this coding scheme, which is called a modulus 11 coding scheme, because 11 was used as the number by which I divide, and 11 is a prime number, and why I used 11 will be clearer when I explain the theory. So now if I take this number and again 9 multiplied by 1 and so on and add and divide 100 by 11, the remainder is not 0. So I know immediately there is an error. So the machine, what it will do is, when a code is entered, it will have a little program inside it which will do the simple arithmetic calculation, divide by 11 and find out if the answer is 0 or non-zero. If the answer is non-zero, it will say it is an error. If it is 0, of course it will accept it and go ahead. Now the simple theory. The theory is explained in great detail in this book on systems analysis and design, and in fact in chapter 11 the full theory is given in great detail, but I will very quickly say what the idea is. What we did was, we took the individual digits and multiplied each one of them by a weight, and so we have two quantities we used. One is the weights. So one question is, what weight should I pick, and then I did mod n, sigma of wi di, mod n should be 0 by design. So what should be the value of n and what should be the value of w. Okay. Now I have to find out what values of wi's and what value of n will work. Okay. And that is done by just looking at, suppose the single transcription error and dk, the kth digit becomes t. Now sigma wi di becomes sigma wi ti di plus t wk minus wk dk, because I to n wi di already has got everything in it, and because dk became t, this is the extra term which is added because these two are equal. Now sigma wi di mod n is 0 by design. Okay. So t minus dk times wk mod n should not be equal to 0. If it is 0, then of course it will, even if there is an error, it will say there is no error. So conditions are, wk should be less than 1, because if it is greater than 1, mod n can be non-zero. Okay. T minus dk must be less than 10, which of course is satisfied because everyone is a digit there, and the weight also should be less than n. So n should be greater than 10. The weight should be less than 10. Okay. Product of integers cannot be a prime, so n should be a prime. Okay, because the point is, this is the product of two integers. This product of two integers should not be divisible by n. So that means n should be a prime. Okay. So smallest prime, which is greater than 10, is 11. So that is why 11 was picked. Now the weights, for single transposition error, single transposition error means dk and dm get interchanged. So now if I rewrite this formula again, wi di and dk wm, there is the mth digit which became the kth and mth got interchanged, and so I can write this out, and I get dk minus dm times wm wk should not be equal to p times n when p is an integer. That means it should not be divisible by mod n. So one thing is that wm minus wk should not be equal to 0. Okay. That means weight should be distinct, and dk minus dm is less than 10. If n is greater than 10, this is always satisfied. If n is prime, product cannot be a prime. Therefore, n is equal to 11 is satisfied. So, what it means is that the weight should be distinct and unique. The n value should be 11, which is the lowest prime greater than 10, and no weight can be greater than 10. So, what it really means is that this will modulus n check digit system will work only if the number of digits in a code is equal to or less than 9, okay, because the 10th digit will be the error detecting digit. If there are more than 9 digits, and if there are say 11 or 12 digits, then I go to the next higher prime. Suppose there are 12 digits, then I can go up to weights 12 and next prime is 13. So, it will be modulus 13. If it is hexadecimal, it will be modulus 17, because 16 is the largest number in hexadecimal. For alphanumeric codes, there are 26 plus 10, 36 symbols, and in alphanumeric codes, I would code A, B, C, D as after 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and so on, and I can use a modulus 37, because 37 is the next prime greater than 36. Okay. So, there are other validating checks which are there, and when large volumes of data is input, you have certain checks called sequence numbering, batch control, data entry and verification, record total, and modulus 11 check digit. And I think I have to explain each one of them in much greater detail. What is meant by sequence numbering, what is batch control, why they are required, and what is data entry and verification, what are record totals. Of course, modulus 11 check digit is whatever we already talked about. Okay. So, next time I will start from here and talk about the validation of data inputs apart from what is there with a modulus 11 check digit.